Hi, I'm Mary, a librarian and book reviewer with a focus on stories written for kids, tweens, and teens. Today, I am joined by Traci Sorell, who's a best-selling author of inclusive, award-winning historical and contemporary fiction and nonfiction in a variety of formats for young people. A former federal Indigenous law attorney and policy advocate, Traci is a Cherokee Nation citizen and first-generation college graduate. She lives within her tribe's reservation in northeastern Oklahoma. Welcome, Traci.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
Can we talk a little bit about your book, Being Home?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So tell us a little about the story and how it came about for you.
So, kind of a couple of different things came together at once. I of course, was reading like many parents do, reading books to my son. And one of the things that I noticed were all these stories about moving were just filled with angst and sadness and just horrible loss. And I thought, what? Moving is not always awful. Like I moved many times as a child within the Cherokee Nation reservation, wherever parents had better job opportunity, or maybe housing was a little cheaper, or we were moving closer to family, we would pick up and move. And so it was always presented as like an adventure, and we were all together on the adventure, right? So it wasn't this traumatic thing. Fast forward to, again, now I'm a mother and we are not living within the reservation where at that time we were in the Kansas City metro area, but we would come down to see my siblings, and my son at the young son at then was saying, why do we have to leave? Why can't we just stay here? And because that is where he felt like home, right? These are our people, this is where we need to be. And it's like, well, there's this thing called, like my husband's job at that time was not flexible to move. I could work anywhere, but he could not, because I had a consulting business, and I had at that time been thinking, about writing for young people. And so I was starting that journey. So that's really where that came together, is like, there are kids who would be like, yes, like this is what I want to do, but also, family circumstances may prompt people to move. And so Being Home is the story of a young girl and her mom who moved from a city in the West back to the Cherokee Nation reservation, where, their identity, their family, culture, language, etc., is centered, and how that is being home, and our families, our language, our culture, history, all of those things combine to be home for us. It's as much tied to place as it is people and all the things that make up who we are. So several in several reviews I've seen them talk about how, oh, this is kind of a different moving book, and I was like, yeah, I hope so, because they're not all, like I say, I mean, every move involves discomfort, because you do have to pack up stuff, and move things, and that's exhausting, and the journey itself can be tiring, but for the most part, if you're all still together, even if you're, moving out of distress, that new place can provide comfort. And so I just wanted to relay that in a story, that you can see moving in a different way.
Absolutely. And you
Yeah.
incorporate some Cherokee language in this book as well. What was your decision for doing that?
I always try to do that because I want young people to understand that, of course, English is not the first language of this country. Many native languages have been spoken on this continent for um, tens of thousands of years, and including, the Cherokee language. And so that's still spoken today. There are, kids their age that would be reading the book who are speaking Cherokee. They're going to immersion language schools. They have Cherokee speakers who are first language speakers in their family. So just helping, young Cherokee children to see what is familiar to them, but also for those who don't speak the language or aren't familiar with Cherokee, to understand that it does still exist, and has been part of, this the history of this land and this place for a very long time.
So you said that writing wasn't necessarily your first job, and you decided later to start writing stories for young people. What made you feel like that was a calling for you?
Yeah, it definitely was not something I ever saw myself doing. If someone had said to me, 15 years ago, oh, you're going to write for kids someday. And of course, that's about, you know, a little after my son was born. I would have said, yeah, I don't think so. Because I had, of course, like everyone does, right? We all use our creativity in whatever work that we do. And I had used that in writing legal briefs or testimony for tribal leaders to give on the Hill, at the US Congress, or, you know, writing federal grants, doing those kind of things. But writing for children really was prompted by when my son was about preschool aged, because I had, of course, read through the books that I had in my collection that were focused on Native people. And that really was, historical, more in nature, obviously not contemporary. But two, it was traditional stories from other nations. But as I came to kind of really analyze them, a lot of them written by non-native people that did not stay true to the story of the tribe. Like they had, in essence, kind of made it how it might be palatable, or whatever their version is they wanted to tell. And so I was like, oh, well, let me find the Cherokee stories, right, that are historical or contemporary. And there were so few, and there were no contemporary stories. And I thought, that's wild, because we're the largest Native nation, within the borders of the United States. And I knew that lots of Cherokee people wrote books, but clearly they were for adults, and so I was not seeing those things. And so that's when I thought, well, if I can't find these books for my own child, then that means that other Cherokee families aren't accessing these, and teachers and librarians can't access them. And that's when I got concerned. So it truly was, like I say, nothing I planned to do. It was of not encountering what I needed as a parent, and then thinking my son is going to be entering K-12 education soon. And if I can't find these things, then they need to be created. The nice part, and the really beautiful part about the way the universe and the ancestors work on us, is that at that same time, there are lots of other Cherokee and other Native people who are having this same, I will say, directive given to them, right? To get stories out for our young people that show us in our full humanity and what our contributions are, what our histories have been, et cetera. And so, about the same time my first book comes out, then you see just before and after, like more Native voices coming, Cherokee and otherwise, and that was incredible to be, So now, I'm kind of like coming on to the scene. My first book, We Are Grateful, Ojali Haliga, came out in 2018. And all these other books, either, around that same year and after that, really are kind of coming into um, the marketplace, the trade marketplace for young people. So it's been fabulous to just have this kind of whole cohort and peer group of books, because then I got to share all those with my son. And I said, you don't even understand like how much I would have loved this as a child, And so it's very healing and celebratory to, have those available to read, but also to know that I am able to be part of helping to create that, and to encourage more people from a variety of Native nations to lend their voices through their words, through their visual art to, regardless of what it is, board books to young adult for our young people. It's just been a lot of fun, really enjoyable.
And as you're talking about all of these books getting out into the world, into the homes of not only Cherokee families, but everyone, um,
Mm-hmm.
Two of your books were selected to be a part of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, which brings books into the homes of children birth to age 5 all over not only the country, but the world as well. What has that been like for you, and how did you find out that it was selected?
That has been an incredible honor. I love Dolly Parton. So, I've been around several decades, and Dolly has been a staple of my life since childhood. I grew up on her music, and so when I learned that an imagination library had been created, I was like, absolutely. I mean, books in the hands of children from birth till they start kindergarten every month. Yes, absolutely. Let's do that, And the fact that she works with nonprofit partners worldwide is fantastic. I had hoped that my first book would be selected, but then when I researched the program, I realized that Penguin Random House publishes the books. And so if a book is published by the Penguin side or the Random House side, those are the ones that are um, eligible for consideration. So when my editor at Kokula, which is an imprint on the Penguin side, contacted me and said, "Would you like At the Mountain's Base to be considered?" Which was my first book with them, the second book I've ever published. I was like, absolutely. And of course, the illustrator had to agree to, and with Show You All Vitre absolutely did. The same thing happened with Being Home, and Caldecott medalist Michaela Goad agreed as well. So it was wonderful because then, the book has to be, once you agree to it, then the book goes into the consideration process and you have no idea if it'll be selected. But when I heard that, I was like, wow. And At the Mountain's Base was on the core list, or in essence, in this country, what is like the English list. But then after it cycled off of that, it was translated into Spanish. And so now it's on the bilingual Spanish English list. It's been on that for a few years. So I love that. I love that it's still a part of the program. And then Being Home, this was its first year because it just came out in 2024. So yeah, it's been an absolute honor and just a lot of fun to know. And for people to post pictures and say, "Hey, did you know your?" I'm like, "I did," and that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I could see this young person getting to read it with you. That's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the great things too about that program is not only that are these kids getting books every single month, but it might not be a book that they would find at the library or pick up at the library. And so it's
Right.
inviting many cultures to kind of come together over these stories as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as you're writing, what sort of research do you do or preparation for putting these stories together?
hmm So like for Being Home, because that really kind of came from personal experience, I didn't have so much to do, but I knew that um, for Michaela, it was going to be a heavy lift. Michaela Goad is from the Tlingit Nation, which is in Southeast Alaska. And so she lives in the Tongass National Rainforest. And it is a completely different environment than really the Four Seasons, hills, creeks, rivers, in what is called green country, the northeast corner of Oklahoma where I live. She's got, almost think like what I think of as, in the forest there, it's like if you've ever seen where the Ewoks live in Star Wars, right? Like very tall trees, gorgeous, um, rushy, wonderful. But she's, also on an island in the ocean, right? So she lives there in Sitka. And so I sent her a lot. I sent a lot of photos to our editor, and I said, I'm going to share these with Michaela because she's not going to, be able to come down here and spend time seeing kind of the flora, fauna, landscapes, people that make up the Cherokee Nation and sunrises and sunsets. And so that's where you get really the brilliant fuchsia that you see in the book is because she goes, "Wow, I was looking at these pictures of your sunrises and sunsets and the redbud trees, which are one of our trees that are one of our first flowering trees in spring. And it's this brilliant fuchsia. And it was like wonderful for me because I just take that for granted. But yeah, she lives in a place that there's a lot of rain, it's a lot of clouds, a lot of fog. I went to her area of the world last summer, and we did a bookstore event and spent some time together. So, I do live in a very different climate. So it would just, all of that really helped. But for At the Mountain's Base, that is a poem. So again, I think on both books, the work for me really is more in the craft because I haven't written for children all my life, and I haven't written any creative stuff since high school when it was assigned and I had to do it. And so really making sure that my writing is tight and lyrical and leaves lots of room for the illustrator because they're going to tell more than half of the story in the art. And so I want to woo them, as much as obviously I want an editor to be interested in the story to publish it. And so I think for me, it's always reading a lot of different books and picture books, if that's what I'm writing, or whatever it is that I'm planning to write at that time, and kind of looking at mentor text. How are they structuring things? And some of those structures help me tell the story. That's one of the first things I usually try to figure out. And that's how it was with, like I say, with these books of how do I make this writing as tight, so that it is visually as well as textually, a beautiful read aloud that goes well together. And like I say, I'm grateful for all of the books, and these two books to be selected, like I say, to go into homes across the country, because I just love what we have been able to create together with, like I say, the editor and art director at Kokila.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you have any formal education in writing books, or is a lot of your experience just from reading and learning kind of experientially?
Yeah, I don't have like a bachelor's in English or an MFA in creative writing or anything like that. I went in a completely different direction, with really my social science background and then law. So it has been a lot of um, workshops and reading blogs. So kind of, 2, 3 day workshops, something like that, at a conference, whether that was early on like SCBWI or Quayle, the Color of Children's Literature. Um, I do heavily read, and that's one of the things that I heard over and over again from mentors was you have to read deeply in whatever it is you're writing because and within the last couple of years. So the market changes not super fast, but it does change. And of course, the market has changed again since COVID. And we find that word counts are even shorter than they were before, because we've got to rebuild the reading stamina. And so, you have to be aware of those kind of things. And again, that really makes you hone your craft and think about like, how do I tell the story? Brushstroke in what is important without laying down lots of extraneous things, either in the dialogue or in the text to explain stuff. It's like, it truly is showing and moving the action of the story along, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. It really doesn't matter. When people say, oh, well, isn't it so much harder to write one or the other? It isn't to me. They both require my complete commitment to what the story needs. And there is no formula. It's like each book demands a very different path. And that's what I like about it is because I like variety. And that's why, people are like, oh, you write so many different things. That's because that's my interest. I want to do a lot of different things because it forces me to continually keep learning and pushing myself. And sometimes I'll start working on something and I'm like, oh, your craft level is not where it needs to be right now to do this. So you need to put that aside, keep reading, keep working, and then let's come back to that. So it's a very humbling a profession, and one that too requires a lot more vulnerability than I thought it would. Before I started, well, I didn't have any clue. Like if I had a clue, I probably would have been like, I don't know that I'm going to do this. I didn't know. So, that, that not knowing, is what allowed us to be having this conversation today. Cause I think I've been like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I didn't know. So, sometimes when you don't know, you just, like I say, it's sort of, I feel like, analogous to parenthood. Had I not had parenthood, I don't know that I could have done this because, that forced me to grow and just see the world in ways that I hadn't conceptualized previously. You know, I may have understood something on a intellectual level, but not, in the practical everyday reality of it. And so similarly with writing, I don't think until I'm in the middle of it do I go, oh, this book's gonna need a lot from me. Okay, all right, and and it should, right? If it's going to, if it's worthy of being on the paper and out in the world, I feel like it does need to feel like, you have put in the effort to grow it. Yeah.
Of all the books that you've written, are there any that stick out to you in a really meaningful way?
Um, I mean, all of them have been, uh, like I say, growing me in different ways. Like I would never have expected like my debut book to be as well received as it was. I mean, I feel like that helped launch many other opportunities for me to present the variety of stories that I have. Um, but my what came out as my third book, because of course, you're writing all the time, or I am on different things. And some things sell before others. So We Are Grateful is definitely not the first book I wrote. It's just the first one that got sold, and then others got sold after that. But India No More, a book that my friend, my late friend, Charlene Willing McManus wrote. It's a middle grade historical fiction book based on her life and the lives of others from, the Grand Ron Nation, which is located in the northwest corner of Oregon. It's a confederation of, various tribes that were all kind of removed to that area. And in the 1950s, the United States terminated its government to government relationship with the tribe and said, you can't keep your land unless individual citizens can buy it outright at a price that we set. Everyone else is getting moved. And so Charlene and her family were moved to Los Angeles. People were relocated to bigger cities and put on the train and sent, south or up to Seattle, San Francisco, etc. And so it's the story of what that's like to know your reality and then be sent somewhere where your reality for other people exists in Hollywood caricatures, right? Westerns, Lone Ranger and Tonto, those types of depictions, and then having to reconcile your reality with that. And I love the voice of the character, Regina, who, like I say, is a composite of, Charlene and other people's things. And so Charlene contacted me. We had, met years before at the Quayle, Color of Children's Literature Conference in New York City. And she told me about this book. And I said, my gosh, Charlene, you've got to finish this. It needs to be out in the world. I said, this is a critical part of our country's history because so many Native families are moved from reservations to the cities during this time of termination and relocation. Um, and I said, we have, more people outside of the reservations because of this time period than within them, right? So 2 years goes by. We've been in contact and stuff, but then she, contacts me out of the blue and says, "Hey, I finished the manuscript. I've sold it." And I said, "Yeah, I'm super excited about that." She goes, "But I can't finish it. The editorial letter to make all the edits because my breast cancer has come back, and I need you to finish it." So that was definitely the hardest because, first of all, I had not done any middle grade work at that point. So immediately I'm like, I am not the person to be doing this. And so I contacted my agent and I was like, I don't even know what to think. She goes, well, let me read it. And so she read it before I did. And she was like, I think you could definitely do the edit. And I was like, okay. So then I contacted Charlene back and I said, okay, my agent's like, we can do this. The publisher, Lee and Low, was super supportive and helped me go out to Grand Ron, because about a month and a half after Charlene and I talked, she passed away. And so I visited with her husband and other family members, but she and I never got to have like a conversation about so many questions that I had about the book. Like, what about this or that? I'm just left with trim this, make this cohesive, kind of put all those things together. And so I deleted some things, added some things, in consultation with, like I say, the Historic Preservation Department and other cultural staff at Grand Ron, her family and other folks. So that was probably the one that I'll say stuck with me the most, because I knew the importance of having this book in the world, not just for young people, but for adults, because again, nobody learns this in K-12. It's a huge part of our national reality that's going along simultaneously, right? In the 50s with the civil rights movement, the space race, the Cold War. It's like all of this upheaval is happening and people are being, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are being moved into the cities, and nobody knows this is happening, right? 109 Native nations. Until, yeah, this one of the books that I have coming out next year. That's another one that's been a lot of work. But Indian No More, like I say, I just knew it's an important part of her legacy, but also what it would give to young people in terms of them understanding the importance of not seeing someone new to your school as the stranger or putting your presupposed ideas on them, right? Like, let yourself be open, be educated as to who that person is, because we don't resemble the Lone Ranger and Tonto or the Westerns. Those are all composite stereotypes that get combined together. So it's, like I say, it's been very well received, and I'm thrilled that it's in Spanish, it's in large print, just it's lovely how that book has been picked up on many state lists, and I'm thrilled because it makes me sad every day that Charlene can't talk directly to the readers and hear all the lovely things they're saying. I know that she hears and I know that she knows those things, but it would just be lovely for her to be in the room when those things are happening, because she deserves that.
What a really intense project. And as you say, learning something new with every book that you write, that's a big jump with all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
What is it that you hope readers come away with as they engage with your stories?
I certainly hope that they see, Native people, whether that's regardless of their age, right? Regardless of the Native Nation, whether it's Cherokee or others, that we are still here and that we are making contributions, and we have always made contributions, and that we have families, we have challenges, we have celebrations just like everyone else. And yes, there are things that are fundamentally different, right? We are citizens of our native nations first, and then citizens of the United States. So that makes us politically, distinct and legally distinct from everyone else in this country, who, it's not just like, a lot of times I think the way people will look at it is like, oh, it's like another culture group. It's like, well, no. Do we have rich cultures? Yes, absolutely. But no, we are, fundamentally treated by the law. We have our own laws, but, if you look at federal law and even some state laws, like, we are treated differently. And so that's something that I want young people to understand. And even with that difference, right, we are all still human. And often what gets displayed in K-12 education is, these were people that existed a long time ago, and by 1900 they were gone and they're not really part of the story or relevant. It's like, no, these people actually are your neighbors, they're your coworkers, they are people who are contributing at a national and international level, right? To, in medicine, in the space, we have folks who are working at NASA doing stuff. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening, still today. And people just don't know unless those trade books are out in the world, because unfortunately, curriculum continues to be controlled by keeping the same stuff that I read in the 70s and 80s as a child in place. And it's like our world's much more dynamic, and young people know that because they do have access to a lot more information, right? And it is readily accessible. So there's no reason for you to be doing this other than wanting to keep that information from them. So, I think that's too why we've seen the rise in book bans the last 4 years, is that trade literature is providing, you know, those depictions, whether it's like contributions of women that have historically been attributed to men, and then we find out no, it's actually a woman that created this, or discovered this, or wrote about this, and then it was, taken over. I mean, whatever it is, like it's like, okay, it's the 21st century. It's time to move past this and let our young people know exactly what is happening and what has happened, because they are going to find this out themselves. And it just creates distrust in adults when we don't show up with honesty and integrity, And so I'm grateful that trade publishers have continued to put those books out in the world, and I hope that they continue to do so.
Yeah, well said. You alluded, Traci, to a project that you're working on. Are you comfortable talking about your upcoming book?
Absolutely. I have two books out next year, and I'm super excited about both of them. The one of them, kind of analogous to Indian No More, that has pushed me so much, is called Riding the Trail, Cherokees Remember the Removal. It's a middle grade nonfiction photo illustrated book that I co-authored with a fellow Cherokee citizen who's a award-winning photographer and journalist. And it follows young people, Cherokee people, who ride each summer. They apply and are selected to ride on bicycles from our homelands in the southeast along the northern route of the Trail of Tears, because there's several different routes that were used, to the Cherokee Nation reservation, and they end up in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, at our reservation, and that's for about 3.5 weeks. But they do 6 months of training, language, history, and training on the bicycles. So physically training each weekend together. And it gives them, they also have their genealogy done so that, they may know about ancestors, but they trace them back to the ones who were at least at the time of removal, so that they know, kind of which routes their ancestors were on, where they were living in the homelands. And I thought, yeah, this will be great, right? Because the Trail of Tears is about a paragraph in K-12 curriculum. And so let's show that we have survived past that, right? Because that's when, of course, people go, oh yeah, they're all gone. No, we're still here. And we, did arrive in Indian territory to a new reservation. And later, that many decades later, that becomes the state of Oklahoma. But they arrived to nothing. There were no houses waiting for them. There was no food waiting for them, no crops in the ground, nothing, right? The late fall and winter of 1838 and 1839 was a very arduous time. A quarter of our population was lost during this process, and they were rounded up and put in internment camps, babies to elders, and held until they left in very unsanitary conditions. And so, but I was like, yeah, we're going to show this ride. And again, I had no idea what that would mean, to me, like following them in the comfort of my car. I was not on the bicycle, thankfully, but just witnessing them experiencing all of this, and then starting to think for myself, okay, this is all of, this is my ancestors too, and learning about where they had been and which route they had been on. It was so intense. And at the same time that I'm working on this, you know, I am losing family members in real life, right, with the pandemic, and very close friends, and so it was just so much, and so like I say, I'm grateful to have this story of hope. That it's like this was a really, really difficult chapter in our nation's history. And yet, here we have young people today who are honoring those ancestors. And because of this leadership development program that the Cherokee Nation's Education Department created for the first time in 84 and still operates today, you have young people who go on to be wonderful community leaders, wonderful contributors, really honoring that legacy of the people that survived that journey. So it's just wonderful, and I'm so excited, like I say, to share the story next year. And then I have a picture book called Indigenous from A to Z, which is illustrated by Natasha Donovan, who I worked on classified the story of Marigold Ross, a Cherokee aerospace engineer. That'll be out as well. And it's free verse poems that I've written about, again, history, kind of contributions that we don't know or don't get integrated into our curriculum, and then more detail about people and events and things in the back matter. And I haven't seen Natasha's full color art yet. I've seen the black and white sketches, but I'm like, wow, this is going to be a stunner. So just excited about both books for next year. And once again, grateful that I get to do this work. It's truly an honor and a blessing to work with the book teams that I do to create these stories and to put them out in the world.
Yeah, those sound wonderful. I'm looking forward to reading them when they come out. Traci, I've asked you several questions today, but what is the question I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Well, you didn't ask me about being on the Oklahoma Dolly Parton Imagination Library Advisory Board and
Oh,
how wonderful that is, because we just have had the program for a few years now of seeing counties get signed up because there's nonprofit partners who are working to get the books out. And so I'm ecstatic that we just got a handful of counties left to fully be partnered and getting young people enrolled before Dolly will visit Oklahoma. And I'm like, yes, because I'm super excited to meet her.
that's awesome. What an accomplishment. Because it is, it's a lot of work on the ground to get
Yeah.
so many nonprofit partners together to cover the whole state. Congratulations.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the staff, they do an incredible job. And so it's exciting. And it's wonderful to see tribes that have partnered to help get all the young people on their reservations, like signed up, if they're born in their hospital, to get them signed up at birth. Um, and just really working with their local nonprofit partners to make sure that everyone's covered. And it's like, yeah, this is wonderful. So it's um, lovely to see that, one, we finally got the program, and then we have that the reception and the excitement for it has been so enthusiastic. So
That's great news.
yeah.
And how nice for you to be able to be involved in that program as well, not only with your books, but also with this advisory
Yeah,
position.
I mean, it was, like so surprising when they reached out and asked me. I was just like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, actually, I have a book on the list, and they were like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah. And then, of course, like I said, being home came, more recently. But I was like, yeah, I actually have a book. I was like, I'm totally behind this program, 100%.
That's wonderful. Traci, where can folks go to find out more about you and the books that you have coming up?
Definitely my website. I keep that up to date. Traci, Traci, Sorell, Sorell.com. I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky, not as frequently, just because I'm trying to get a lot of writing done. I tend to be on those more when I'm traveling for book events or things come out. So yeah, my website has information about me, my books, interviews, all kinds of stuff, video and blog interview things. So definitely I would go there first.
Perfect. Listeners, if Being Home or any of Traci Sorell's other work sound like great fits for you or for someone you know, I hope you look for them wherever you get your books. And Traci, thank you so, so much again for joining me today.
But no, thank you for having me.